Hey everybody, and welcome back to the evolution of Zelda. Continuing the theme of this series, today we'll be taking a look at Zelda's leap to the Super Nintendo with The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. If you haven't seen the first two parts of the series, I highly recommend checking them out as I'll make references to them throughout this video. A link to the playlist is in the description. With that said, let's jump right in with A Link to the Past. With the grand success of both The Legend of Zelda and Link's Adventure being among the top 10 sellers on NES, Nintendo began working immediately following Zelda II on a follow-up title. However, with Nintendo moving over to the Super Famicom, or Super Nintendo in America, they decided to move the title to the newer hardware. On the year anniversary of the console's release, A Link to the Past was released to immense critical acclaim. And for the first time in this series, I can actually give a little bit of perspective on what it was like to play that game back in the day, at least a little bit. I was only 10 months old when the game released, so obviously I didn't play it quite yet, but it was one of the first games that I ever laid my eyes on when I was a kid. A friend I knew had an SNES and played the game from time to time when I was over. The mystery of the princess's message, taking up arms to save her, and the beautiful world of Hyrule entranced me from the very first moment. It's honestly one of the experiences I remember most vividly from that time, and it resonated with me enough that I became more and more interested in gaming. Clearly that love has only blossomed as I've gotten older, and funny enough, I didn't even play A Link to the Past myself until adulthood. So knowing it had a special role in getting me into the medium and the praise critics have hailed on the game over the years, what are my thoughts on it? Now, in the previous two episodes of the series, I haven't held my punches when taking shots at the poorly aged look of the NES games. This time I've got none to throw because this game, that is 26 years old mind you, still looks phenomenal. Of course, I did say in this series we'd be judging by a modern standard, but also that we'd be more lax from a technical perspective with more retro titles and focus on their art style. I feel like on that merit, this game exceeds what's expected of the tech at that time. I don't understand it. How does this game still look so good today? Every complaint I put forward in the previous two reviews is resolved expertly in this title. In contrast to The Legend of Zelda, the environmental variety in this game is stellar, with returning areas such as the Lost Woods and Death Mountain making appearances, and with new series classics such as Lake Hylia and Kakarot Village being introduced. The enemy design is much more straightforward this time in terms of difficulty scaling via colors, and the enemy variety in terms of visual design overall is much greater than ever before. The game is so vibrant in a way that I was desperately seeking in Zelda II. Everything in the light world pops with such life and it draws you in deeply. And when you traverse the dark world, the drabness isn't a matter of lacking color, but instead clever usage of dark tones and themes to make the world feel without life but still very much alive. That's it. Believe it or not, I've got no complaints at all about the art design. It's genuinely spectacular even by today's standards, and it gives off an amazing first impression. Following the pleasurable visual impression, you're met with the same quality when it comes to the sound design. The series continued to grow from a game with great but too few tracks to one with many tracks that were decent to great to one that has many great tracks that have a higher level of quality thanks to the hardware's capabilities. Many signature series tunes make a return here, and iconic songs such as Zelda's Lullaby make their first appearance. Every single one of the overworld and dungeon tracks gives so much personality to a world that's beaming with color, and it really shapes the experience in a positive light. My only complaint, and as I said with the Zelda II review it could just be me, but after a while the beepy nature of the 16-bit tracks can wear on you, though since the fidelity in this game is much higher, the effect is quite a bit lessened. As far as the sound effects go, there's nothing that really stands out, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Sound design is often done best when it doesn't make an overly strong impression and instead is just a passive complement to the gameplay. There are of course some memorable sounds such as the sword beam, I just think that the music steals the show in this category. After playing through the first three games, I almost feel as if I couldn't have chosen a better series for our first true start in the evolution of gaming. When a franchise starts off with a high note like The Legend of Zelda and follows up with a questionably passable sequel in Link's Adventure, it's a marvel to look back and see how Nintendo would handle the next step. Nintendo's never been afraid to try something new, and though they at times innovate for the sake of innovating rather than really pushing things forward, they are masters of dusting themselves off and learning from past mistakes. At least back in the 90s in terms of Zelda. Enough foreplay. A Link to the Past masterfully takes the design philosophy of The Legend of Zelda, takes the great quality of life updates Zelda II provided like the magic system, NPCs to add to realism, and small side quests to obtain non-essential upgrades, and it blends it all together into a masterful experience. It takes a lot to be able to look at your past work and really evaluate what works and what doesn't, and the development team took every good bit of the previous two titles as clay, and they not only used every piece of it to shape this game, but they added more great features to it. The most notable is the parallel worlds mechanic. We'll save the story for later, but suffice it to say the game has a very long introduction that takes you through some lighter dungeons dungeons culminating in an epic boss battle only for you to be thrown in an alternate version of Hyrule, the Dark World. Throughout the game, you have to traverse effectively through both versions of Hyrule, the Light and Dark Worlds, to be able to save the mains and finish off our favorite antagonist, Darkness Ganon. The interesting thing about the mechanic is that you can use an item known as a magic mirror to travel out of the Dark World at any time back to the Light World, but you can only reach the Dark World through a magical aura left on the very spot you traveled from, or special warp plates found throughout Hyrule. This clever design prevents the player from accessing certain areas by blocking them off with blockades that require items from earlier temples in the game. This gives the player a natural push to progress through the game in a particular way, but you're actually given a decent amount of flexibility in how you go through the game. One of the biggest extensions of this is how much side content there is in the game. There's a ton of optional items in this game that you can get to make the experience easier. One such item is an ocarina that allows for fast travel in the Light World. Using it, you can travel to multiple different locations in an instant. While looking at this option, it's also a great time to mention that you can access the overworld map at any time, which was a fantastic choice. The previous games didn't have such a system, and it's incredibly useful here. It also takes some of the cryptic nature out of the game by denoting the areas where you need to go to progress the story, such as dungeons or temples. Another optional item is the magic powder. Using this, you can transform enemies into what the fuck is this? You use it to transform these into fairies, only for that. To get such items often involves a side quest of sorts. The alternative missions in Zelda 2 were incredibly basic, and while the ones in A Link to the Past aren't horribly inventive, they are at least a step up. A lot of them actually end up being mini games, and I'd have to argue a lot are more irritating than fun. For example, there's this digging game. Fuck this game! You get 30 seconds to dig up as many holes as you can, you gotta pay 80 rupees to play, and every time there's a random one single random tile that has a heart piece. I legit played this mini game for 30 minutes before I got the heart piece. It was such a heart-pumping moment when I got it with only 1 second to spare. Come on, skill-based mini games will always be appreciated more than this kind of random garbage, so this is a bit of a word on the experience, but hey, it's optional and insignificant in the grand scheme of the game. What's a lot more fun in finding optional items is how you'll often have to make clever use of the Dark World's map to give yourself access to areas you couldn't otherwise reach in the Light World for upgrade. The final thing to mention on upgrades is this time around you actually get some personality around the upgrades you get. For example, instead of starting with a crappy-ass wooden sword, you're able to get one of the most iconic weapons in all of gaming for the first time in the series, the Master Sword. You can get upgrades to the sword, which makes it weird-ass colors, but honestly, you look like a misfit by the end of the game anyway. Between armor upgrades, sword upgrades, a massive mirror great shield, and your freaking pink hair, you look ridiculous. You know what's even more ridiculous? This fucking fairy! What? I'm sorry, this segue might have been a bit jarring. Let's take a step back. Another new wrinkle this game brought to the table is fairy upgrades to do things such as double your magic meter and give you upgraded versions of items. But these fairies look normal. What the hell is this? At first I was like, oh, it's because it's in the Dark World. Creatures in this world are warped to opposite versions of their Light World realities. Then I found a regular fairy in the Dark World. Why do you look like this? Whatever, this plump lass is necessary for you to get the silver arrows, another example of upgrading a previous item, in this case the bow. You know, I'm sorry, I got really sidetracked by this whole thing. Just what the fuck? To speak briefly on the combat and enemy design, it's similar to the rest of what I've discussed. It's a good leap forward with more varied enemies and clearer levels of power based on visual design, and the combat itself feels a lot more fluid overall. Finally, let's talk about the progression through the game. You start off by taking your uncle's sword in his stead and saving Zelda. You step forward with a plan to obtain the Master Sword by getting 3 Pendants of Virtue from 3 dungeons to prove you're worthy of wielding it. Once you do, you're just a bit late and lose Zelda to the Dark World. Defeating Agnem, a character we'll detail shortly, you're sent to the Dark World with his last breath, and from there you must save 7 maidens he captured one by one from each dungeon and take on Ganon in his tower. It's a very similar line of progression to the previous games that has you going through 11 dungeons in total, but with many more side quests, more polished combat, and a lot of quality of life updates to enhance the experience. A Link to the Past is a true culmination of the past 2 games' strengths. And as I've been raving about every wonderful bit of the gameplay along with graphics and the sound backing it, the story stringing it together is the strongest presented yet in the series. Long ago, a thief known as Ganon was able to take the Golden Power, or Triforce, for himself by invading the Sacred Realm where it was housed. When laying his hands on the Triforce, Ganon's wish to turn the Sacred Realm into a nightmare of his own design was granted. The realm changed into the Dark World in a reflection of his own image. In an act of desperation, the 7 sages sealed away the beast in this Dark World at the behest of the King of Hyrule. Though this provided a short time of relief, greedy souls soon longed for the power as Ganon once had, and gradually these thieves started disappearing into the Dark World. Their greed leading them astray, they were soon turned into Ganon by an army of evil that was unleashed on Hyrule in what's called the Imprisoning War. This war resulted in a devastation of Hyrule's army, but this cost was made to allow the descendants of the original 7 sages seal away Ganon one final time. With this, Hyrule saw many years of peace, until suddenly catastrophes began occurring around the kingdom. That is until a wizard named Agnem showed up, providing what seemed to be miracles to rid the land of their plight. Naturally, this got him favor with the king, but before long it became became apparent that this wizard was manipulating the king in an attempt at a coup d'etat to seize power and capture the descendants of the sages that sealed away Ganon for that second time. Now that's all just backstory. That's how much goes into you starting the game. But unlike the previous two titles that had nearly 100% of the story taking place in this way with the game giving little representation, the game itself actually has a way of showing the story this time around. As the game begins, you awaken hearing a telepathic message from Princess Zelda requesting your help in saving her. Your uncle suddenly leaps into action and tells you to stay indoors. But of course you're Link, and with a spark of courage you follow your uncle to find him on the brink of death. You agree to take up his sword and shield and complete his mission to save the princess. Eventually saving her from the clutches of Agnem, you meet with Sashrala? Seriously, I know I suck at pronunciation sometimes, but please give me a pass on this one. Continuing on, good old Sasha tells you that to defeat the evil wizard, you'll need to take up the Sword of Evil's Bane, the Master Sword. To do this, you'll need to obtain 3 pendants to show you're worthy of taking it as your own. In doing so, you take a bit too long and Zelda's captured and sent to the Dark World, and despite quickly defeating Agnem, he's able to send you to the Dark World too. From here, Sasha communicates with you telepathically to tell you that you must save the maidens, descendants of the 7 sages, so that they can break the seal on Ganon's castle and prevent him from achieving his goal of breaking the seal on the Dark World and flooding the Light World with his evil might. As you save each maiden, they give you reinforcement of your courage and tell you further information on the backstory of the game, and when you finally save Zelda from her imprisonment, you're able to storm Ganon's castle and confront Agnem. But it seems the wizard was just a front for Ganon the whole time, and he flies off into the Pyramid of Power. Using arrows of silver and all the might you've gained from your journey, you're able to slay the evil beast and claim the Triforce for your own. Being pure of heart, you make a wish on the Triforce to undo all of Ganon's wrongdoings and restore Hyrule to a world of peace. Of course, this game is a distant prequel to The Legend of Zelda, so unfortunately Ganon is resurrected, but thankfully we know the Link of that time is able to banish the beast once again. As the credits roll, you see everyone you met throughout your journey and everything ends so happily. It's a very warm, rewarding scene that allows you to reflect on your accomplishments and the wonderful game you've just experienced. Normally in this series we jump into the entertainment value section, but I feel that I've already gushed enough about just how much I love this game. To quickly bridge everything together, you've got timeless, lively graphics that are backed by an amazing soundtrack. To match this backdrop, you've got well-polished gameplay with a hefty amount of side quests and dungeons to take on, and your desire to do so is heavily backed by the gravity of the incredible tale that the game represents. What Nintendo did with this follow-up to the NES classics is nothing short of miraculous, and it makes you wonder how they'd be able to make the series grow from here. I hope you all reflect on that question as I leave you today, because I think the next game in the series needs no introduction. It's been a pleasure sharing my thoughts on A Link to the Past with you in this video, and I'd love to hear your experiences with it in the comments. For all the latest video updates, be sure to follow me on Twitter, and be sure to check me out on Twitch where I play the Zelda games and more live. Thank you all so much for your support in this series, and of course, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.